Hi, it's Beth Ann Gallagher from Spellbound by Movies, coming in live from Los Angeles. It's really late, but I wanted to give a little bit more of an update than what I've released so far. Last time I talked to you, I talked about Wednesday, a little preview. So I did have the media mixer, which was great. It's just a little informal gathering, and it had TCM people both from in front of the camera and behind the camera as well, with snacks and beverages and things. PR from TCM was there, and they wanted to make sure all the media, even the bloggers, mixed with the TCM staff, so they offered to do intros, which was really cool. Then after that, later in the night, there was a social influencers mixer, which is really cool. TCM pays attention to its fans, what they think and what they communicate, and they target people who have something to say, who have followings, who could have followings, who are out there in social media talking about TCM. And so that was a gathering of people. This was my second year of it being an official social media mixer that I went to, and I got to see some familiar faces from on social media and from the fest as well. Thursday, they had Meet TCM, which is different. They used to do a media press conference, and then they would do the general Meet TCM. Since that was a little redundant with information, they just combined everything for press releases into Meet TCM. One of the biggest things I think people would be interested in is the fact that Jennifer Dorian, GM of TCM and Filmstruct, suggested that people weren't going to be disappointed who missed the cruise, and a lot was mentioned about Filmstruck, about exploring digital options, even revamping the website to be more mobile friendly. Could TCM itself be a streaming channel outside of the Watch TCM app? That sounds like something that they're getting ready to explore. Then after Meet TCM, there was a welcome party, but I skipped that. I went over across the street to the TCL Chinese Cinemas area, and I saw there was one person in line for finishing school by about 4 o'clock. I didn't want to be the second person yet. I wandered around, and I went to the TCM boutique, and I bought a couple of things. I bought the Noir candle, which is really neat. It smells like gardenia and a little musky and a little smoky, so that was good. And I also got the commemorative pin as well, which has the Grauman's Chinese Theater on it, so that was fun. They had a lot of merchandise in there, and TCM's e-commerce person, Taryn, was there staffing the boutique, helping people. She works with Yakov, who's from TCM Backlot, in the home office, so it was fun to get to meet her, and she knew me from the commercial, so that was cute that she said hello to me, because she felt like she already kind of knew me after seeing me so much. After that, I did go over to finishing school. I ended up with a ticket in the 20-somethings, and I got into that, but that was the first closeout of the festival. Not everybody could make it into that one, so that is very likely a TBA. Wyatt McCrae, the grandson of its star Francis D, was there. He was interviewed by author and historian Jeremy Arnold. They talked a little bit about Francis D and how she wanted to do a great job working on a pre-code, but she did have some issues with the material. At the same time, she wanted to work, and that's what was being filmed then. Interesting perspective to hear. Finishing school itself was a lot of fun. Ginger Rogers was Pony, one of the naughty girls that knows as long as she keeps up appearances, she can do whatever she likes, which is very hypocritical of the headmistress, played by Beulah Bondi. And eventually Frances D has to make a decision what kind of life and what kind of woman does she want to be, a hypocritical one, a flighty one who's uneducated, like her mother, Billie Burke, or one who lives her life as she wants. Then, after finishing school, I went to the Sea Wolf, and that was Michael Curtiz, or I guess we should really say Michael Cortez, but historian Alan K. Rody thinks it's too late for all of us to change to that pronunciation. The Sea Wolf is an adaptation of a Jack London novel, and it starred Edward G. Robinson as the titular Sea Wolf, a crazed captain aboard the ship the Ghost. And also on board the ship, John Garfield, Ida Lupino, both of them criminals. Will they be reformed, caught? What disaster will befall them? And then there's Alexander Knox, who I think he was making his film debut in that, Canadian actor. Definitely a sea movie that if you want to see a sweaty, creepy, villainous seamen, all headed by a corrupt captain, that's the movie for you. I don't know if I should give you a hint of how it ends. You should see it for yourself, because you can see it for the first time in many decades in a restored version. 14 minutes of the film were found and reinserted for the restoration. It had been cut for a double bill of the Sea Wolf and the Seahawk. C&C, yes. And both movies had been cut down for a double bill, but the Seahawk had its footage restored years ago. So a great chance to see something new on that. And then what did I do for today? Because that was yesterday, Thursday. So for today, I saw The Charge of the Light Brigade. Again, that's another Michael Curtiz or Cortez. Alan K. Rody, the historian, introduced that one as well. It starred Olivia de Havilland and Errol Flynn. Interestingly enough, it was the debut of Errol Flynn's screen mustache, so big thing on that. And then the other thing that also made its debut was a score about Max Steiner. So he went on to make over 140 film scores, and this was his first, very effective in the movie, which is a tragedy for a good majority of the characters, even though it's not quite historical. It does have the Alfred Tennyson poem in the end of it. And a nice twist, there was an actor that I wasn't familiar with, Casey Campbell. He was also at the screening, and he actually read The Charge of the Light Brigade, the poem that inspired people to make the movie, because it commemorated the British soldiers had sacrificed their lives to save their fellow countrymen. Then the sad news, some of you already saw it on Twitter and elsewhere. I was shut out of Blessed Event, a pre-code starring Lee Tracy, where he plays an unscrupulous gossip columnist. He goes from advertising to gossip, and he was based on Walter Winchell. Maybe not all the facts, but the personality seems to be what they were going for. Also notable for being the screen debut of Dick Powell, who's a crooner in the movie. So I'm hoping that'll be a Sunday TBA. I don't have a word yet on what any of the TBAs are. I was number 92 for the 177 seat theater. A lot of VIPs wanted to see that one. It's hard because I heard Theater 4 in the Chinese cinemas, it gets a lot of the pre-codes that are on film, because that's the one in the Chinese theaters that can show film. That's why we're always competing and trying to jostle for good numbers when we go over to something in Theater 4 over that. After I was shut out, wandered around for a bit, and then ended up back at the Roosevelt Hotel into Club TCM. There was a conversation with James Ivory from Merchant and Ivory. And Dave Karger, the new TCM host, was the interviewer. He himself had quite a bit of fandom that he displayed for Merchant Ivory films. He had a little bit where he talked about Room with a View and being a 14-year-old and seeing that with his mom and dad, and being particularly astounded at shall we say, the nude bathing scene or frolic with some of the male characters. Funny, because a lot of us females who ended up English majors and all of that, tend to think of the big kiss in the field of flowers as the opera song goes on between Julian Sands and Helena Bonham Carter. But I guess we all have in common that we all loved Julian Sands in that movie, either way. And a lot was talked about his creative process and how he books actors and why certain actors repeat, or why he changes how he casts actors. He might see a streak of villainy in them and then cast them as a villain or a baddie in the next movie. I'll have more in-depth details about that on the blog. Then I watched 2 documentaries. One was Scandal, the Trial of Mary Astor. That actually had a delayed start, which I was a little disappointed with, because I really wanted to see that documentary. It was one of my must-sees of the festival. Since so many fans had been shut out of seeing the first inaugural Robert Osborne Award presented, the TCM decided to put together a video of it already, which we knew would happen, but they didn't want to wait for it to air on the network. I kind of felt like I could wait for it to air on the network. I didn't feel bad that I wasn't a VIP or a Spotlight Pass holder and I didn't get to see it. Although I love Martin Scorsese's films and what he's done for film preservation and to educate the general public about films. So kudos to him, he really deserved that award. But I could have waited, and unfortunately that presentation of the award, the recording went on for a while. I didn't time it, but at least 20 minutes, maybe even longer than that. Ben Mankiewicz did an introduction. After the introduction, Leonardo DiCaprio did an introduction, and then Martin Scorsese did his acceptance speech. All great content, but not what I was there to see. What resulted was the documentary played, and we heard Alexa Foreman, the director, who is a TCM researcher since the original launch of the network and a good personal friend of Robert Osborne. She was able to introduce the movie, but there was no time for a Q&A at the end, and there were Mary Astor family members in the audience, and they didn't get a chance to come up and speak either. Overall, the documentary was something that you will feel familiar to you from watching TCM, since Alexa Foreman has worked on Word of Mouth and other documentaries that have aired on TCM. And for those who don't know the details of the trial, they'll be surprised. And one of the great things about the documentary is how much footage is included of Mary Astor and her husband Thorpe's daughter Marilyn. She's still with us. She's an adult. She's very articulate. There's a very touching moment in the documentary where she reads some of her mother's thoughts that she wrote that she never got a chance to see before. You really feel for her as a child who was torn between 2 parents, and what it was like to be the child of a very driven and opinionated woman who had to work to help them survive after the divorce and custody trial as well. I don't want to give away too much if you haven't read any of the books about the custody case yet. So definitely check out the documentary. I am sure that will end up on TCM. One big fact I want to let you know before you see the documentary: Robert Osborne, as a personal friend of the director, Alexa Foreman, remembered her in his will. The money that he left her down to the penny, funded the clips of Dodsworth that are in the documentary, which is a breakthrough role for Mary Astor. It's the role that made her sympathetic to the public despite the custody trial, and it's the role that really showed everyone how well she could act. You might have another role like the Maltese Falcon, which is more your favorite, but Dodsworth was what made her break through, even though she had been acting since the silent era. So Robert Osborne's bequest to Alexa Foreman made those clips presence in the documentary possible. It's really an amazing story how he did that. Such a thoughtful man, right down to the end, caring and helping. That made me a little teary when she was telling that story. And the documentary is dedicated to him, which you would expect, as they were friends that would meet at least once a week for lunch for as long as they could with each other. Oh, so much emotion between the documentary and some of this backstory on the making of it. Then after that, I did stay on for To Whom It May Concern, Ka Shen's Journey. That documentary is on Nancy Kwan. It originally came out in 2010. I hadn't seen it yet. I do have to say, as an audience member, there was an issue. Since the Robert Osborne Award recording pushed everything back and delayed the Mary Astor documentary from airing, it was almost as if To Whom It May Concern was abandoned. There was no presenter on hand, no announcement it was coming on. The audience hadn't cleared out yet from the Mary Astor documentary, and between the audience being excited and wanting to meet people associated with the film and with the family and chatting and people at the bar, it got exceptionally noisy and chaotic. What happened was the documentary was just put on. That's the To Whom It May Concern. It was just put on without the announcement, like I said, and then they played with the sound to get it up a little louder. A lot of people didn't pay attention. They didn't grant the courtesy for those of us like me who are sticking around for the second documentary. It was really hard to hear for the first 15 and 20 minutes, and eventually a couple of audience members made sure that the door to Club TCM was shut because the hallway was even adding to the noise of trying the noise that was fighting the documentary's sound. Once it settled down, a lot of videos, some film. Nancy Kwan participated in the documentary. I learned a lot about her that I didn't know, and I really haven't seen that much of her work. She's most known for The World of Susie Wong and the Flower Drama Song, and people talked about her from her life and her career. People talked about how she influenced them. There was a ballet that was performed of The World of Susie Wong, and so much of her personal life revealed. And I didn't know about a family tragedy that still hurts and haunts her to this day. But at the same time, when it was happening, she showed what a good person she was. I don't really want to go too much into detail about it. If you haven't seen the documentary yet, you can watch it on Furl like I did. Well, I think that's it for now. So that's my update. I've got you Wednesday through today, Friday of the festival. I'll be doing some more updates later. Have a good night. I really should be asleep and passed out, but you know how it is when you're at a festival. I just got a little too wired from the festival. So, good night to you.